Shalom everyone, and welcome to the 613 Commandment Exposition, where we take a look at the 613 commandments of Torah and learn how to apply them to our daily lives in an acceptable, cultural, 21st century way. Now today we're going to be dealing with 12 commandments regarding business practices. And basically, to sum it up, it's as simple as this. It goes down to the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, be fair in your business practices. Don't be dishonest or conniving or scheming to have somebody else have the disadvantage and you have the advantage unfairly. And the very first commandment that we come in contact with in regards to these 12 commandments of business practices is a prohibitive negative commandment taken from Leviticus 25:14. And it says, if you make a sale to your neighbor or a purchase from him, here we go, do not cheat one another. So basically it's do no wrong in buying or selling. Everything should be square, above board. Everything should be in black and white and honest in every way, shape, or form. Very, very practical, very simple. Nobody could disagree with that. And Leviticus 25:37 is another prohibitive negative commandment. And basically, it's like if you loan money to a fellow brother, in this case, an Israelite, if one Israelite loans money to another Israelite, that the money that's received back after the loan is what you lent out. In other words, do not make a loan to a fellow Israelite on interest. You're not to profit or make money off of your brother who is in trouble. He wouldn't be coming to you for a loan if he wasn't down on his luck or in a pinch or in a scrape somehow. So we're not to take advantage of our kinsmen, our brothers' unfortunate situation, but we are to cut him a break and help him out by not having interest on whatever we loan. Now, the scripture says that it's totally acceptable, and we're allowed to charge interest to a foreigner or to a stranger, basically somebody who's not of your ethnic and or religious community. You can charge interest with but to your own fellow man, your own fellow brother in the Lord, or fellow let's say you're Jewish or Hebrew, your fellow Hebrew, you're not to charge interest on a loan. Leviticus 25:37 says, let's start at verse 26. Do not profit or take interest from him, but fear your God and let your brother live among you. You are not to lend him your silver with interest or sell him your food for profit. Verse 38, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. So basically he's saying the reason I don't want you charging interest to your fellow Israelite, your fellow brother in the Lord, if you will, is because remember how hard you had it in Egypt. I mean, you had a bad way to go. You had a lot of things to overcome, and because you know how hard life can be and how hard life was, don't make it any harder on your brother here in the present day and time. You both are Israelites. You're both in the land of promise. You're to be a blessing to one another. You're to treat one another like family and not make money or profit off of one another. Now, Deuteronomy 23:20 says, you may charge a foreigner interest, but you must not charge your brother Israelite interest, so that the Lord your God may bless you in everything you do in the land you are entering to possess. Which leads us to the next prohibitive commandment from this verse, taken from this verse, is basically not to borrow on interest. And the reason being is this would cause the lender to potentially sin. Now, Exodus 22, starting at verse 25, it says, if you lend silver to my people, to the poor person among you, you must not be like a creditor to him. In other words, don't harass him for the payment back. And you must not charge him interest. Verse 26, if you ever take your neighbor's cloak as collateral, return it to him before sunset. Verse 27, for it is his only covering, it is the clothing for his body. What will he sleep in? And if he cries out to me, I will listen because I'm gracious. So, if you want to take something as surety, to show that the person is good for the loan, or that they have every intention of paying you back, it shouldn't be something that the person needs for their livelihood. Other examples in scriptures: don't take an upper millstone. That's how a guy makes his living. Don't take a person's cloak. And if you do, give it to him at the end of the day, because that's what he uses to cover himself up at night to stay warm. So don't take anything as collateral or surety that will harm the person in some way, or make it harder for them to pay back this loan that you've given him. So in other words, be a decent human being. Think it through. And so that encompasses the fourth out of the 12 business commandments that we have. Now, Exodus 22:25, we've read this before, but it says, if you lend silver to my people, to the poor among you. The way the Jewish scholars read this if, they really basically look at it as when. So even though the passage says if you lend, it's understood as obligatory. In other words, this is a positive, affirmative commandment that we should lend to the poor. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. We need to help the poor out. And if we were in the same position and in their shoes and the tables were turned, we would want somebody to lend to us and to help us to get by. And Yeshua said, you will always have the poor among you. But the way the Torah is set up, it's set up that the government doesn't have to institute a welfare system. So you remember the laws of gleaning? Like if a person is poor, they can come behind the harvesters and glean whatever is left behind or dropped, so they can have the dignity of a hard day's work and at the same time provide for their family. It's like a welfare system. So kind of like this along the same lines is being able to lend to a poor person, because it's considered a good deed, it's considered an affirmative commandment to do, and it's considered acting like God, being godlike in a loving way of lending to a poor person. And then the same verse, it further says, you must not be like a creditor to him. So this is a negative commandment, saying basically you shouldn't demand from a poor person repayment of his debt when the creditor knows he can't pay. So basically, don't harass him, don't press him, don't give him a hard time, don't make him feel anxious or pressured in any way. Just know that when the guy can, he will pay you back. And I briefly mentioned this before, but it says in Deuteronomy 24:6, do not take a pair of grindstones or even an upper millstone as security for a debt, because that is like taking a life for security. So basically, how's this person going to prepare their food and eat food in order to have the energy to work to be able to pay off a debt or a loan? Don't take anything for collateral or surety that's going to impair or make the poor person have a hard time paying you back. So that is considered a negative commandment. Now, Deuteronomy 24, starting with verse 10, is basically being a good creditor. When you're collecting the debt or collecting the security, the collateral, the down payment or whatever, that you are to treat them like you would want to be treated, like an equal, not as a lower, less than human being. You're supposed to show dignity, honor, and respect to that person. Just because they're poor doesn't mean that they're less than you. It says, when you make a loan of any kind to your neighbor, do not enter his house to collect what he offers as security. Don't just bust in there like you have the right and own the place and take whatever you want for security. Verse 11, stand outside. Respect his privacy. Stand outside while the man you are making the loan to bring the security out to you. If he is a poor man, do not sleep with the garment he has given as security. Be sure to return it to him at sunset, then he will sleep in it and bless you, and you will be counted as righteous, and it will be counted as righteousness to you before the Lord your God. So basically, this is a prohibitive commandment of not taking a pledge from a debtor by force. And the last part of that verse is also a negative commandment, basically telling us not to keep a pledge from its owner at the time when he needs it. Given by the example is if you take his blanket or his cloak, give it to him before the sun goes down so he has something to keep warm in and sleep in at night. And from that same verse, on the flip side, there's a positive affirmative commandment that comes out of that, to return a pledge to its owner. Now, Deuteronomy 24:17 brings us a prohibitive commandment. It says, do not deny justice to a resident alien or a fatherless child, or do not take a widow's garment as security. So this particular commandment is focusing on the widow's garment. So basically, it is a prohibitive, negative commandment not to take a pledge from a widow. She's already got it rough as it is, because back in the day, women weren't independent like they are today. They needed a male representative of their household to help provide for them, to help keep them safe and secure. And so one of the laws is that if a man dies, leaving his wife behind, that wife was supposed to marry a brother or a cousin of that individual so that she would be properly taken care of. So kind of in the same way, you cut your brother a break by not charging interest on a loan. You cut a widow a break by not taking a pledge from her. Just whatever you loan her, know that she's good for it. Leviticus 19:36 is a positive commandment, basically talking about honesty, not cheating people out of their money, not charging more than what something is worth. It says you are to have honest balances, honest weights, and honest dry measure, and honest liquid measure. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. There were a lot of crooked merchants who had, how like gambling, some people have loaded dice so they can, the game will be in their favor. Well, sometimes merchants back then, when they weighed out, goods, and determine the cost of the goods, they would have two different weights and measures. They would have that one that's accurate and one that was heavier. And so they would be able to charge more than what something was worth. So whatever they were weighing and equaling out, like say it's grain or whatever, the weight would be heavier than what the grain really is. It wouldn't be equal balance, and so they could charge more for it and cheat people. So that is a prohibitive negative commandment, not to commit fraud in measuring, not to commit fraud when in your business dealings, basically. And the affirmative commandment taken from this is to ensure that your weights and scales are accurate. The verse above it says, do not be unfair in measurement of length, weight, or volume. And then we already read verse 36, you are to have honest balances, honest weights, honest dry measure, honest liquid measure. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So basically, ensure that your scales and your weights are correct so that people will be charged accurately and fairly, and you won't be ripping anybody off, and you also won't be getting the short end of the stick, so to speak. And the last commandment out of the 12 in these commandments regarding business practices is basically not to possess. You're not even to have in your possession inaccurate measures or weights. You're not to have two different sets. You're to only have one set, and they're to be accurate. This is taken from Deuteronomy 25:13 and 14. Do not have differing weights in your bag, one heavy and one light. Do not have differing dry measures in your house, or large and smaller. You must have a full and honest weight, a full and honest dry measure, so that you may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. For everyone who does such things acts unfairly and is detestable. They're an abomination to the Lord your God. So God hates cheating and unfairness so much, he just doesn't call it a sin. He calls it an abomination. It's detestable. So above all, a businessman, no matter what business you're in, realtor, car salesman, carpenter, plumber, whatever, electrician, you are to be fair and honest in all your business dealings, not ripping people off just so you can have more money. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. Go out there and have a great day. God bless. Abraham'sDescendants.com, getting back to the first century in a 21st century way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell that'll let you know every time I make a new video. And don't forget to share this with a friend. Also, visit our website at Abraham'sDescendants.com. Thanks. Shalom. Thanks for watching. Stay connected by subscribing to our other social media accounts and visiting our website at Abraham'sDescendants.com.